Hi, my name is Rainy Thunder.
Hi, I'm Gage Goldson.
My name is Callum Weasler.
My name is Raquel Craig.
So the topic question is, what do we know about generational/historical trauma? Historical/generational trauma. You guys know the definition of it?
Yeah. So, according to Claire Gibson, 2003, this article she wrote, generational trauma, also known as intergenerational or transgenerational trauma, is a cycle of trauma that passes through families. Generational trauma occurs through biological, environmental, and psychological and social needs. So, for example, some evidence suggests that generational trauma can happen in the uterus. So, a fetus being exposed to like chemicals involved in the stress that like the person that's going through like trauma can impact the development of the fetus.
You want to go into it?
Sure.
According to Myra Laura L., it is stated that there is growing concern with the substance abuse that is the effect of historical/generational trauma inflicted by the United States, ranging from the illegalization of Native American practice of traditional religion until being lifted in 1978. Boarding schools that were established as a way to cleanse Native Americans from their traditions and practices, and as well as the harsh and racist treatment to Native Americans in general.
Oh, it's not touching.
Natives over the age of 12 were unfortunately exposed and fell addicted to alcohol and illicit drugs. Not only was it the exposure of drugs and alcohol that has affected Native Americans, it is also their mental health that has taken a toll from this trauma. Thoughts of these historical traumas have usually caused emotional distress. Some experience anger, depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies, grief, PTSD, and more. Some of the studies of this subject were put forth, such as the University of Minnesota, where they interviewed Native Americans to have a better grasp and understanding of their traditions and trauma. About 13 people were interviewed from that university, and they were awarded $10 gift cards for attending this study case. Participants were told that, and mentioned, the interviews were all confidential and were to never affect their sobriety maintenance programs or any other agencies that the participants are involved in.
So my article was called Personality Disorders and the Parent-Child Relationship, Breaking the Cycle of Generational Trauma in Family Courts. So according to Abdul Star, Personality Disorders and the Parent-Child Relationships, Breaking the Cycle of Generational Trauma in Family Courts, generational trauma, also known as intergenerational trauma or transgenerational trauma, is trauma experienced by one individual that passes down from generation to generation. Generational trauma is more common than people think, and in ways that are even more common than that. And it affects people a lot more than they think it can. People can be born with it due to their ancestors experiencing traumatic events for a certain period of time. It can be passed through family easily due to it being present already, or gained through experiences they go through in their life. Thus, identifying the source of trauma requires an in-depth look at the family's history. With a generational trauma, you're going to have to ask family to get a better understanding of what kind of trauma that your family just might be carrying between each generation. It won't always start with your parents, it might start with theirs and carry on, or it might start earlier than that. When it starts at the parents, it's usually due to them not being ready to meet all the child's needs when they're growing up and dealing with it in a non-progressive way for the child, which can lead to trauma and regression for the child's growing up process, and additionally, it could lead them to develop a personality disorder, which would lead to additional stress for the child trying to grow up while having to deal with generational trauma. Basically, generational trauma can be obtained in many ways, but it's mostly caught when you're still young. It could be the environment, home, or the area you've grown up with. Or it could just be experiencing a traumatic event in your life. The STAR says that when it comes to healing generational trauma, however, experts emphasize the importance of looking at the past. All in all, the best way to break the cycle and avoid being stuck with the trauma is just to talk about it instead of ignoring the feeling and let it build up over time, leading to the generational trauma getting worse.
Thank you.
Okay. According to my article, Forced Assimilation and Abuse, How Boarding Schools Devastated Native American Tribes. Boarding schools started in 1819. These schools served the purpose of assimilating Native American children, or introducing habits of civilization. Children as young as 4 years old attended the schools. Children were not allowed to speak their language or practice any traditional ways of life while attending. The staff had cut their hair upon arrival and stripped down their traditional regalia. If a child refused, they would be disciplined or punished physically. This continued until 1978, when the forced assimilation policy was rejected because of the Indian Child Welfare Act. The former students have recalled the harmful and degrading treatment they had gone through by the hands of teachers and administrators, such as being separated from families and physical abuse. Descendants from former students say that the trauma has been passed down through generations and manifest broken relationships such as substance abuse and alcohol abuse that affect reservations today. Former students of the boarding schools were sent home after the Indian Welfare Act of 1978. After arriving back home, most students turned to alcohol because they were exposed to it at a young age, along with physical abuse that had these habits were passed down generations leading into today.
Okay, so did you hear any words about solutions or proposals or ways to heal in your articles?
Yeah.
I wrote the words down, so I heard it. So what did you hear or what did you read?
I feel like a big solution that we can like teach people nowadays is just like educate them about generational trauma. You know, like I think education is very important, like with this type of stuff, so we can like learn and do better. But like you know, it's kind of hard to stop it if that person's family's already like gone through it, and you know like it's not like the easy thing to stop. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, I just feel like education.
Is it stoppable?
It is stoppable, but like, what I mean is like, yeah.
It takes effort and time to
Yeah.
actually do it.
Right.
Like the
Were
person-
any of you at Summit last fall?
I wasn't.
They had some really good sessions on generational trauma. In fact, one was so packed, it was like 1,000 degrees in there. But it was very, very interesting because they brought in tribal healing practices for the generational trauma. Okay? Instead of having a case study done at the University of Minnesota or you know what I mean? Where you're being intellectualized. But yeah, okay. So you do believe it could end.
Yeah, I
Do you think all tribal people believe that?
I feel like it could be different from person to person.
Person to person. There you go. Yeah. And maybe how extensive? It's a fantastic group discussion topic because it goes forever and there's so many case studies. All right, so solutions. I brought one up from Summit that I attended. Anybody else? Rain had the healing in his with maybe being born with it. Okay. Any other solutions that you've learned about in your college career? Still learning? Still learning?
At the summit, I went to a discussion about integrating generational trauma into like the government part of it, but that's what I remember.
And I think it's
Counseling.
starting, yep,
Counseling,
council. Mhm.
Going out to a outside source besides yourself is a really great way,
Yes, yes.
so you're not like feeling so alone.
Right, and we have really come a long way at Tribe since I started 6 years ago with posters for mental health and the wellness center. I mean, they're posted everywhere. They're online, they're on your phones, they send you text messages, they're available, they're in the bathroom stalls. So that is one step, but it's markedly improved from 6 years ago. Just the word's out. Okay. All right, anything else from the audience? Good points, thank you. Is anyone going into counseling here for,
Time.
okay, all right,